Hello, everybody. It is the time of the year again when we at Checkly release all the new and good stuff that we've been working on for the last few months. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Stefan. I'm part of Checkly's developer relation team, and I will be your host for today. So, I will guide you through the session. But before we get started, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. So I already see a lot of comments coming in. We want you to be part of this session. So if you have comments, questions, feedback, please put it into the chat. We will answer questions in line if you have any. And my guest for today is actually a big dad joke fan. So today we thought that we will introduce, or that I will kick off this week's Launch Week session with my favorite developer pun or dad joke. So if you have any others, please drop them in chat. I'm ready for some pretty good jokes, but are you ready for mine? So why are front-end developers usually eating alone? And I'm already embarrassed by it because they're bad at joining tables. And with that, let us get started. In case you're watching and you're not entirely sure what Checkly is about, Checkly is a synthetic monitoring platform that allows you to scale up and make sure that all your APIs and websites are up and running properly. So you can use our API check feature to monitor your APIs around the planet on a schedule. You can check when they're better in performance, or when they're bad at performance, when the performance is degrading. And if you want to level it up a notch, you can control headless Chrome using Playwright to monitor your essential user flows around the planet on a predefined schedule and get alerted when your APIs and or browser checks are detecting an issue. And that is pretty nice because then you can fix issues before okay, now the dad jokes are already distracting me. Before your users hit your customer support. And we have hit a major milestone last week. We have run over 5 billion check runs, and this boils down to 4.5 billion API checks and 0.5 billion browser checks. And don't be misled by 0.5. This still means we have run headless Chrome to monitor essential user flows 500 million times. And I'm still puzzled by this huge number. And we're ready to get to monitor or to kick off the next 5 billion check runs going forward. This launch week is packed with good things. I'm super excited about all of it. Yesterday, we talked about monitoring as code. Today, everything is about Playwright Test and end-to-end testing using headless Chrome. Tomorrow, we will talk about our new public dashboards. We're going to talk about our new analytics API. And on Thursday, Daniel will join us, and we're going to talk about SOC 2 Type 2 compliance and what it means that we run Checkly on a very, very high scale when it comes to security. And as already mentioned yesterday, we were talking about monitoring as code, which meant that we released our new Checkly API, and it allows you to code and define your entire monitoring setup in code. Let it be browser checks, API checks, alert channels, groups. You can put all of these in your code base right now. And if you're close to deploy to production or you're developing locally, you can now use our new Checkly CLI to test that your APIs and your end-to-end flows are working as you expected. And then once you hit production, you deploy your source code, you can also update your monitoring setup using Checkly Deploy and make sure that if something goes wrong, that you be alerted before anyone notices that something is off in your platform. And to celebrate monitoring as code, we want to do a home office makeover in the upcoming weeks. So if you're interested in leveling up your monitoring and testing game using Checkly and you want to play around with the CLI, you can join the giveaway. And all you have to do is use the CLI, give us feedback, and then if it is a public project that lives on GitHub, add some README badges to your project and let us know. We will give away something that is worth $500. It could be headphones, it could be a keyboard, it could be a chair. I'm personally looking at these walking pads to kind of get my 10K steps in while working. So if you want to level up your monitoring game, this giveaway is the perfect opportunity to get something nice for your home office on the way. And with this, I already made it through the intro here right now. And with that, I want to introduce my man of the hour here. And this is Jan. And Jan will tell us everything about Playwright Test. So Jan, can you quickly introduce yourself? And how is life, my friend?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jan. I'm engineering team lead at Checkly. And I work in a team that is responsible for building the native Playwright Test integration. And life is great. I'm excited to be here.
So the most important question here right now, as I teased it already, you're known for your solid dev pun game. So do you have one for us here right now?
Okay. I prepared something. So brace for it. I hope that I don't spoil it. So what do you say when a JavaScript interview went bad?
I don't know.
Don't call us. We'll call back you. We promise. Okay. I know this was a bad one. So let me give another one. Also interview themed. So why are JavaScript interviews so unpredictable? Because you never know how the candidate will react.
But okay, Niels is saying, "Oh boy, we're kicking it off very, very strong." So I think we should come to topic. What do you think?
Yes, let's. I'm super excited. Let's talk all things Playwright Test.
So yesterday we were talking about monitoring as code and how you. Let me get it together for a second. So yesterday we talked about monitoring as code, and we showed how you can code, test, and deploy your entire setup. And we were actually dabbling a little bit around with Playwright scripts. And we mentioned it on the way that we at Checkly, we're doubling down on Playwright and Playwright Test in specific. Can you let me know why is that and why Playwright?
So what is Playwright? Playwright is a browser automation framework. And these have been around for quite some time. A few years ago, Microsoft introduced Playwright, and they started developing at a very fast pace. They quickly became the innovation leader in this space. And of course, at Checkly, we noticed that, we embraced Playwright, we made it our default framework, and this is great. But we've seen an evolution of what people actually want to do with browser automation. We've discovered that people want powerful testing tools. And in the past, it was you had to integrate a browser automation framework with third-party library. It was manual, a lot of boilerplate. And the Playwright team also noticed it, and they added this great native built-in test runner. So the end result is a great browser automation library with a great built-in test runner. It will feel familiar to anyone who has used Jest in the past. It has batteries included, so you have everything you need there to write reliable end-to-end tests. And the strong point for us is that it has great developer experience. So that all makes Playwright the tool that we are doubling down on, and we believe it's the way to go for end-to-end tests.
Yeah, now that I'm playing around with Playwright for a year, it took me a while to realize that it is more than just a browser control, right? So I used Puppeteer in the past, then I entered Playwright and was like, hey, wait a second, this is actually way more. And I think it is nice that you pointed out that the Microsoft teams actually recognize, hey, people use that very often with a testing framework. They're looking for more, and then they integrated this nice test runner because this is actually what people wanted to do in the end-to-end testing scenario. But you mentioned the Stellar UX or Stellar DX. What are the great features that we're talking about?
Sure. So First of all, it's I mentioned the test runner, so it has everything that you expect from a test runner. You can write multiple independent test cases in a single file. You have the stanzas like test before each, test after each to clean up or prepare resources. You can group tests with test.describe. You can even create tests based on parameters from loops. And the great thing is that Playwright Test has the set of great fixtures, so you don't need to manually initialize browsers, pages, clean up, close. So it's everything taken care for you. The second great pillar of the DX is great APIs, and Playwright Test comes with web-first assertions, and it means that these are assertions that are custom made for the web. They are readable, they are type safe, and the great thing, they come with auto awaiting. So you with Playwright Test, explicit timeouts pretty much became an anti-pattern. Second thing is that you have another API, so user-first selectors. Selectors, for example, you can get element by placeholder, by role, by text. So it's very much you're writing selectors that are locators, they are called actually, that are very readable and very kind of user-centric. And you're not writing complicated, fragile CSS selectors that may break if you deploy a new version of your app. And the result of kind of these powerful high-level APIs is that the test code feels very much like synchronous code. There are await statements, but it very much reads like synchronous code, and the complexity is hidden from you. And you may even say that the test cases looks like instructions that I could give to my mom. Locate this button, click it, then locate the next button by text, assert that it's visible. So it's very, very readable. And the last pillar of this great developer experience is great debugging. So we have built-in interactive debugger, you have traces, and you have videos. And so you have great tools. If something goes wrong, you have great tools to figure out what is happening.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there, the one thing that really stood out to me. So I'm doing software development now for over 10 years, and I was pretty in the front row when end-to-end testing with JavaScript became a thing. And it was a pretty nerdy thing to do at the time, right? I had to a lot of callbacks. I have to figure out how to select certain elements. And over the last year or two, or the last year, it became apparent that Playwright is going towards this user-centric approach of writing tests, which I do think is a good thing, because we at the end want to write tests that for products or websites that, well, some people on this planet are navigating, right? And I think it's a good thing. And the other thing that you mentioned is, doesn't matter if it's your mom or my girlfriend, I feel like that Playwright tests are very, very readable, and they're pretty decent to navigate. But I do think, Jan, that we should show some people what we're talking about. Should we kick it off?
Sure. I'm excited to show, not tell, not just tell. So let's open our demo project. And this is what we prepared, a project that is testing a demo e-commerce application. And we decided to focus on two important scenarios in e-commerce. So you locate a product, you add it to your cart, you go to checkout, and another scenario, you purchase a product and then you leave a review for others.
Yeah, as it turns out, so I actually have worked in e-commerce for several years. So these kind of things, this stuff was when I was struggling like 8 years ago with the early end-to-end testing solutions in JavaScript. So this looks very, very familiar to me here right now. So for the people that are new to Playwright, how is the normal Playwright flow, and how can I run these test cases?
Sure. So first of all, get Playwright installed on your machine. Once you have that step behind you, Playwright has this nice CLI built in. So you just run npx playwright test, and it should run your tests.
It should run our test. And here we are already seeing that there are 2 test cases coming from one file. Can we have a look in detail what they're coming from and what is cool about this?
Sure. So as you can see, we are running 2 test cases with 2 workers, and this is important because Playwright, they passed. That's great. So
Yes.
Playwright will, yeah. So Playwright will take advantage of a multi-core system. In the past, end-to-end testing, it used to be quite slow. It used to take a long time, especially if your test suite is big. So Playwright will actually try to run your test as efficiently as possible, everything in parallel. So that's super useful.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of these kind of things that stands out from Playwright as an end-to-end testing solution, right? So the framework really tries to work against flaky tests, but also slow tests, and running things in parallel is definitely part of the story. Can we have a look at where these tests are coming from and kind of go over it, how it actually works?
Sure. So this is our products.spec TypeScript file. And first of all, Playwright is written in TypeScript, so it will work great with TypeScript if you love TypeScript. Then in the first line, we explicitly import Playwright Test. And this will make your autocomplete happy and also your linter. And Playwright Test uses a global config file. But in lines 3 to 5, we show an example how you can. Okay, so our global config file is the playwright.config.ts. But you can always, so here is where you can kind of globally configure everything for all your tests, but you can always override it with, locally if you need. In this case, we are overriding the action timeout. And below that, you can see 2 independent test cases. So first of all, it looks like jest tests, right? It feels familiar. And second thing, these are independent. So as you will see this page fixture that is injected to each test, and these are independent. So if one test fails, the other one will continue just fine. Also, if your page creates cookies, local storage, anything, cache, it's all independent. So they are nicely isolated from each other.
Yeah, so I don't have to deal with new page, new context. I also think that is a very, very nice thing to have here. But for the people that are not necessarily familiar with Playwright and why it is a great tool, how do I run this? I mean, this is at the end headless browser. And what's the approach to Playwright testing and writing and debugging, all that stuff?
Sure. So let's say you want to understand, let's say you want to really understand what is happening. You want to see it, right? So you have this npx Playwright test, and you can add -- debug, and a little bit of magic will happen.
Magic. Let's have a look.
So what happened is that Playwright opened these 2 little windows. On the right side, you can see a little interactive code editor with a debugger session, and on the left, you can see mini browser. So let's click the little move forward icon in the debugger, and what you will see is that in the browser you have a preview of what Playwright is doing. You can go step by step, and it even gives you this nice little, this little red dot that will indicate exactly which element is currently being used by Playwright. So you can really follow what it does as you go through the script.
Yeah, especially this injected JavaScript snippet that kind of does this little dots everywhere, right? I think it's just a nice little DX sugar thing that makes it just a little bit nicer. But you mentioned all these Playwright APIs and user-centric first. Where are these? Can we have a look at these?
Sure. So, for example, in line 15, you can see expect with await there. And inside, you see a web first assertion. So first of all, we are locating an element on the page using the get by text. You don't use CSS here. You just assert that a certain specific text is there, and then the assertion itself is to be visible. So it feels like you, even if you don't know the page, even if it's the first time you see this check, you immediately understand what is happening here.
Yeah, there was this shift in the, especially in the selector or locator world of Playwright, right, to going this user-centric approach. to really kind of mimic and test what users see, right? So one example could be from a previous world. You would have a CSS selector or data selector, right? But you could still mess up a lot of things when you test your stuff like that, right? You could have a button that goes to log out but is labeled log in or something like that, right? This really feels very close to user behavior. And it almost looks like synchronous code, as you mentioned. I think this is very, very nice, even though there's a lot of magic. But can we have a deeper look at what is actually happening here and what magic is happening?
Sure. So let's go back to our text editor, and so let's take a look at the first test case, and we're going to modify it a bit. I think there is a way that we can improve it. So let's add test.only so that Playwright will pick up just this test case in isolation when we run it. And let's look at the code a little below. Oh, here. So we see this pattern that was very common in the past. So you use promise.all, you click something, and then you wait for a navigation event for URL to change. But I mentioned that the developer experience with Playwright is really great. So we can actually get rid of this. So let's get rid of the promise.all. Let's add a nice await statement in front. And what will happen is Playwright will perform the click, and then it will move on to our next action, which is below 19 to 21. It is locating a button and clicking it. And Playwright will use auto await here. So it will wait for the next action, for the next element to become actionable. Actionable, it means that it can be the target of clicking, filling, hovering, etc. And actionable is there are few scenarios that Playwright will await for. So it will await for the element to be attached to the DOM, visible, not covered by any other element, enabled, and stable. So not in animation. So we removed this await for navigation, wait for the URL to change, and we allow Playwright to move on to the next action. It will retry locating our button and clicking it until it becomes actionable, as I mentioned. And the resulting code is simpler. It's much closer to what like end user experience is, and you don't. As you mentioned, we don't depend on the low-level technical details. Before, we've depended on a specific URL, but users usually don't care about URLs. They care about buttons, texts, etc. So this is a shorter and more reliable code.
Yeah, I do agree. So there's also so all these waiting mechanisms in Playwright itself just make the test writing experience so much more pleasant, because I don't have to figure or think about the low-level details, right? It could be a URL change. It could also be an AJAX call that is flying, right? And I have the opinion that, well, if I have some end-to-end tests and developers change, for example, the AJAX call URL where something is going to, my end-to-end tests break, well, maybe the end-to-end test is listening or watching for the wrong things. So I'm very much in the user-centric camp here for sure. But Playwright, second pillar of this entire auto-waiting story, we didn't talk about that yet in detail. What is the second pillar of the good stuff that Playwright provides?
Yeah, sure. So we hinted on the web-first assertions. So let's take a look at the end part of our test case a little below. Okay, this is a nice example. Line 30. So first of all, you see expect. And this is this Playwright took expect from Jest and enhanced it with nice web-specific APIs. So you can assert on that element is visible, has certain properties, that pages have specific URLs. You have a lot of these really readable, high-level web-specific APIs. You have to add a wait statement because there is a little bit of magic happening here. So Playwright will automatically await for this assertion to become truthy. So what we are doing here exactly, so we are locating an element by text, and we are asserting that it becomes visible. And usually with interactive UIs, you may have race conditions, you may have slower load times, and you had to be in the past. You had to use explicit timeouts. It was a bit fishy to write good reliable tests. But here, with power of web first assertions, Playwright will retry our assertion over and over until it either passes or it times out. And yes, you can see we are specifying here this timeout of 10 seconds. So after the previous action, Playwright will move on to this assertion and it will retry until either it passes or 10 seconds elapse. So why we refactored our test? Let's maybe see if this heavy lifting magic by Playwright still works. Let's run it again.
Yeah, but to add to this just really leads to me writing more streamlined code, right? Usually it's click a button, wait for something, don't care about all the surroundings, and just carry on and let Playwright do its magic. I mean, that is what it's for, and I think that's beautiful. We didn't break it, Jan.
Great. So as you can see, Playwright Test is a great framework for writing reliable end-to-end tests. And probably if you want to get started, install it. And there is a neat little tool that we are not going to show now, npx Playwright Code Gen. And it will be quite similar to what this debugger that we showed. But it will be like you will do the clicking, and Playwright will be smart enough to capture your clicks and navigating through your app and turn it into working test code.
Yeah. It is honestly like magic, and it does have pretty similar output like this one. All you have to do with CodeGen, for example, is you click around and you get all these actions so that you then afterwards can just go in and only have to add all your assertions, because Playwright cannot know what your functionality is, right? That would be true magic. Maybe AI can do that in the future. But okay. So as mentioned, this is just a very, very quick intro to Playwright and why it is a new player with a new game and new approaches to end-to-end testing. And end-to-end testing by itself, I always loved its idea, right? When you deploy things, you can test your database, your hosting, your entire stack, going upwards to your entire front-end applications. But when I'm running like a high-scale product out there, a website with traffic, or an actual product, end-to-end testing is probably not enough, Jan, is it?
Yes. So let's assume that you have written your you have this great library. You have written your end-to-end tests. They live next to your application code in the same repository. You even have set up your CI/CD pipeline, and on every deployment, you are testing your code. But unfortunately, we know that testing on deployment is not enough today. First of all, your CI probably uses just a single location, and your users are probably worldwide. They use different networks, different edge locations. You may have location-specific UI components. For example, we are in Europe, and there is always a cookie banner, and or you may display different content depending on the country where your users are. So you have to make sure that it works everywhere, not just on your CI server. Second thing, which is even more important, is that modern web apps usually have a lot of third-party dependencies. You have your Auth0, your segment, plausible analytics, third-party APIs that you integrate with, and these may become slow or may go down, and it may impact your reliability. So it may result in degraded customer experience, or you may go down, and you need to know about this, because if you are down, you're not making money. So you can, fortunately, you can get a lot more value than just deploying, testing on deployment, by turning your end-to-end tests into monitoring. And this is exactly what we do at Checkly. So we take your tests, we run them, your Playwright tests. We run them around the world where your users are. And we do it on a consistent schedule so that you know about any degradation. So we do it every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every hour. All the results are saved in the cloud. And if something goes wrong, if your tests start failing, then we'll alert you. We'll let you know. So we did run our tests on Stefan's local machine, but we can leverage Checkly Cloud and let's try something else. So we can use the Checkly CLI to run this command: npx Checkly test -- location equals AP northeast 1. And this complicated command means that Checkly will pick up your test. It will spin up a headless browser in AP northeast 1, which is Japan, Tokyo, and it will run our test.
This is honestly pretty cool, I think. For the people that are wondering what this magic is about, yesterday at our session, we talked about monitoring as code. And when we have a look at this project includes a Checkly config, and our test failed.
Whoops.
We will have a look at that in a moment. But right now we're running our project here includes a Checkly config, which means that I can use the Checkly CLI to run and monitor and test things really from anywhere around the world. So let's hope for this one coming back again and see what happens.
This may actually be useful because we'll talk about errors more soon. So yeah, let's see. Oh, it fails. Do we have a bug maybe in the code?
Oh, that is interesting. Let's see. I think something is wrong with the iframe. Nevertheless,
Okay.
I think we should move on. What do you think? Instead of debugging this live right now.
Let's roll with it. So so we have our test. It may be broken, maybe not. Maybe it depends on location. So let's deploy it to Checkly Cloud and let's turn it into global monitoring and see what did we do. Did we break it for sure? So let's run npx Checkly deploy, and as I mentioned, it will pick up our latest changes because we deployed it in the past. So it will pick up your tests and it will turn them into global monitoring.
Cool. So we deployed it. So for the crowd, we're not debugging here right now. We're just going to ahead and keep moving. So I'm here in my Checkly in our demo project, and we just deployed this product spec.ts. So what should I do here?
Sure. So first of all, welcome to the Checkly dashboard. It shows you our tests for our demo e-commerce project, and this dashboard will give you like an overview of reliability and performance of our checks over time. And as you can see here, if you hover over the little bars, it's your checks running from different geographical locations. So let's look at our products.spec. Let's press the little three dots on the side. Let's edit the check. And yeah, so this is the Checkly editor. And you can see our changes that we did just a few minutes ago. So we added the test.only and we removed the promise.all. It's not there. So let's remove the test.only and let's try running let's maybe also select a location, something different. Paris.
Let's go Paris. Here we go.
And let's run our script. So what will happen is it's similar to what you get with your local development. So you have web editor, and this time when you run it, it uses the Checkly Cloud to spin up a headless browser and perform your end-to-end tests. And let's see what results do we get. So this is a new section of the UI. This is where our test report will appear, and voila, our test passed. So first of all, the new UI specifically for Playwright Test. This is our native integration. You can see a detailed test report here, similar to what you will get with HTML Reporter locally with Playwright. You can see our 2 test cases that we have defined there. And inside, you can see, for example, the test steps. So we can go there. Excellent. So these are all the actions and assertions that Playwright performed and timing. You can also see like this little status, if they passed or not. You also have access to traces. which we'll cover pretty soon, and videos. So let's maybe open the video so that okay, so it's quite small, it's quite fast, but it gives you an overview of what the check happens, what happens in our test. So let's go back to the Checkly editor. So as you can see, with Checkly you have the power of Playwright Test, but it all runs in the cloud. So you have this nice experience. So now we're back to the dashboard, and let's look at our second check. And this one, it is a little bit red. So you see that it's flaky. Let's
flaky. Oh my God.
So let's press the check name, and let's go to the overview for this check. So this is the page that will give you an overview of how this check behaves over time. And first of all, you have filters. You can select different time range. You can filter by location. You have some aggregated metrics for this check, and you have this little timeline where you can see failures and successes over time. So you can see a lot of red here. It means that our check is failing. Failing means that there will be alerts, and alerts mean that people will wake up. People will wake up because
I hate
probably
that.
probably the website, the app is broken, and you are not. You're losing money. You're losing customers. You're losing money. So Checkly will help you to understand what is happening. So in the past, typically it was quite daunting to you wake up in the night, and all you would get from a failure that happened a few minutes ago was a cryptic timeout message and maybe a screenshot. Yeah. But let's take a look at the failure that happened a while ago. Let's look at this.
By accident, it was also Tokyo. Did you see that? Oh my God, Tokyo is not with us. I accidentally clicked Tokyo.
Maybe there is, maybe there is a networking incident somewhere related to Tokyo. Okay.
Oh, wow. Let me try London with WhatsApp.
London is closer.
Here we go. Okay. Tokyo.
Okay, so it just needed a second to load. So this is the page for a single check run, so a single execution. You can see that it was executed at a specific time and from a specific location, this time from Tokyo. And you have the same UI that we've seen in the editor, but this time for a scheduled execution. You can see our test cases there. And you can actually, there is a nice tip, so you can see errors here, but you can also use keyboard to navigate through this little UI. So you can see the errors, you can see test steps. Let's maybe open and see which exactly test step failed. Okay, so we see, okay, so it was the expect to be visible that failed. We have the video that we mentioned, but there is something much, much better than a video. So let's open our trace.
Magic is going to appear. Let me open it here. What do we have here, Jan?
We have the Playwright Trace Viewer, and it's a very powerful tool. So first time I've seen it, it really blew me away. So first of all, on the top, you see this nice timeline of actions, and you can see screenshots below that give you, in my opinion, even better overview of what is happening than a video. So it is really nice. But the magic is also happening in the bottom section. You have 3 tabs here, and on the left you have list of all the actions, and in the middle, this is really great. So you have 3 tabs here: action, before, and after, and these are actually HTML snapshots of our page. So it's not screenshots. If you go to the first action, and so you can actually hover over the elements there. It's an HTML snapshot, and you can even scroll the page. So it's super nice. If you need to debug something, you have this great tool. So this is how the page looked like during the action execution. And in the tab on the right, you can see some details like what was in the console, what were the network requests, and for all requests you have the headers, the status. For some, you even have the response body. And of course, you have a lot of extra information here. So let's imagine that you wake up in the night and something is wrong with your web app. With Playwright Test and Checkly, you have in the cloud this great tool that will allow you to really deep dive and identify the issue. Either your taste is flaky and you need to rewrite it a bit, or indeed you have a problem somewhere, maybe networking, maybe a dependency. But with this deep trace that Checkly and Playwright Test will give you, you have all the tools to identify the issue.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially for the alerting case, end-to-end testing can be a little bit tricky sometimes, right? And if I receive an alert that something is off, I really want to have as much information about what is off and how I can fix things. And I'm still blown away by this whole trace viewer and trace experience that we now support coming from Playwright, because I think it's just the missing puzzle piece, right? We can monitor things on a schedule, we can alert people, we can run it on different locations. But if the experience to fix things when I need it the most isn't great, I mean, then the entire experience isn't that great. And now with Playwright Test support in GA, I think I'm super happy that you shipped that, Jan, you and the team. So what is next on the roadmap for you and your team?
Well, first of all, we have a little mystery. We have to check out what happened in Tokyo, why our test failed. But on a serious note, so Checkly uses runtimes. Every runtime has a single Playwright version and other dependencies. So we actually are Playwright last week released a new version of their framework. So we are also preparing a new runtime for our users. It will include this handy expect to pass API that will be very useful if you have to retry a specific fishy section of the test, and also expect to be in viewport, which is more precise, nicer API to use than expect to be visible. And of course, we have opened the native Playwright integration to everyone, to all our customers. And we are, as always, looking forward to any feedback, any ideas, any issues that you notice. So please join our the discussion in our public roadmap. And we have a great Slack community. I'm very active there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or if you have any feedback also.
Well, Jan, we made it a little bit bumpy. I will run the command right after a little bit. I hope the people didn't mind that we didn't go into the debug session here right now. But man, thank you so much for joining today. I think I hope that we could share or shed some light into Playwright itself and why we at Checkly think that it is a wonderful tool for end-to-end testing, but why you should start monitoring your web apps and websites with Playwright too. So thank you very much, Jan, for joining. Cool. And with this, we are on the finish line here today. And Playwright by itself is honestly a huge topic. But I hope that you found this overview useful. So in general, if you haven't had a look at it, Playwright comes with auto weighting, web first assertion, screenshots, videos. There's a test runner, there are retries, there's tracing, there's a very nice VS Code extension. There's the inspector and the debugger, and you can start doing things with the code gen feature. And I think it's just a beautiful tool in my and hopefully your tool chain very soon. But if you want to level it up a notch and run your end-to-end tests in 22 locations, get Playwright dashboards, get alerts when something is off with your websites and web apps, schedule your test runs, and really code, test, and deploy your monitoring setup, you can put Checkly into the mix. And honestly, this is a match made in heaven. If you want to learn more about Playwright, I'm publishing almost weekly Playwright tips on our YouTube channel. So you can find the Playwright tips playlist over there, or you can navigate to chkly.co/playwright tips. And really, honestly, we want you to go forward and code, test, and deploy your entire end-to-end monitoring setup. And we think that this is pretty much the way to go. And here's a little reminder over here. If you want to put your Playwright tests into the cloud, into Tokyo, we will debug what happened there right after here. If you want to run them in Tokyo, in the United States, in Australia, using our Checkly CLI, you can take part of our home office makeover. Just let us know what you're using the CLI for, and we are super excited to give out a chair, keyboard, walking pad, or whatever you want to have. And with that, as Jan already mentioned, we are very active in our Slack community. So if you want to hang out with me, with Jan, or with all the people in the Checkly community and discuss best practices, make sure to go to checklyhq.com/Slack. And we made it. Tomorrow, we will have Noel and Pilar onto the show, and we're going to talk about our new public dashboards and the new analytics API. And trust me, it's going to be pretty. We will have cats. We will have a lot of fancy graphs. So make sure to join in. And yeah, thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm Stefan. I'm part of Checkly's developer relations team. And we will see each other tomorrow. Same time, same place. Have a great day.